before we kick things off, I always love knowing who people are listening to these days. I feel like, especially just in the country genre, and there's
Yeah.
really like not a genre anymore. Everybody's overlapping and mixing and trying new things. So it's always fun to know who people are listening to. So who's on your daily playlist right now?
I would have to say Sabrina Carpenter, of course, because her new album's
Because
coming
why
out.
not? Yeah.
Yeah, Sabrina Carpenter, Tanner Ardell, um, who else? Brandon Lake. Um, I'm trying to think who else would be on there. And probably Bodie and Brittany Spencer. Those are
Oh,
probably,
I
yeah.
like that. Very
Yeah.
eclectic and a lot of people that I love as well, like Brandon Lake, who is finally, I feel like, getting his moment across all genres.
I know, as he should.
Love it. So before we dive into the new single, I'd love to hear kind of how you got into music. I know I grew up in a super musical family. So it was kind of shoved down my throat from an early age, but that's not the case for everybody. So what was it for you?
So for me, I knew that I wanted to perform when I was really young. One of my old, I guess, daycare sitters is now a friend of mine. But she said that when I was in first grade, I would get on the lunch tables and I would just like start singing at daycare. So I'm sure it all started then, but how I got into it more seriously was I kind of told my parents, I said, I think I was singing around the house, and my parents said to me, "Oh, is this something that you would like to do? Would you like to sing?" And I said, "Yeah, I would love to." I grew up next to a buffalo farm in Maine, so it was very rural. There wasn't a lot of stuff going on. But what we did have was musical theater. So I ended up going into musical theater, and I have two uncles who live out here with me in LA. And they said, "Oh, would you ever be interested in acting?" And I said, "Sure. Whatever door kind of opens up first. I think we have to be multifaceted, well-rounded human beings, especially if you're going to be in the entertainment industry." So I came out here. I ended up getting super blessed, and I booked a TV show, The Young and the Restless, for 3 years. And then COVID hit, came off of that, and then the strike hit, and the acting industry has been really unpredictable. So I thought to myself, I would like to have a little bit more control over my creative life. And I ended up turning to country music. So that's kind of how it happened. I was like, I just want to feel closer to, I'm sure there was a little bit of homesickness mixed in there too. So I just wanted to feel a little closer to home. So I went and I did a cover of the song You Broke Up With Me by Walker Hayes, and I really enjoyed it. And I went to my dad and I said, "Hey, would you want to come to Nashville with me and, record a project?" And that's what we did.
I love it. I feel like because you've worn so many hats, an actress, a songwriter, performer, how do you feel like these worlds kind of influence each other to kind of create your sound?
I think that they all require something a little different, and I don't know if it's my ADHD or what, but I love doing a bunch of different things. And I think with acting, the whole goal is to kind of lose yourself in this character and, become somebody else. And then, but through that, I think a lot of us also feel like we want to be a little bit more authentic to ourselves. And although we bring little pieces of ourselves into the character, it's not completely us. And I think that part of it, although maybe it didn't influence it in a positive way, maybe that craving of wanting to just put my heart on the line is what influenced the music. But of course, they also both involve storytelling. So I think I also learned that from acting, and I brought that into my music. But instead of telling someone else's story or someone else's words on a page, I told mine. And I think that's how that happened.
I feel like that would be very freeing, is kind of
Yeah.
you're playing someone else, which I think can be very, very fun, and you
Yeah.
really dig your heels into that. But what has challenged you the most about, now kind of diving into your own story through your music?
Yeah. Um, I had a lot to say, and I know that that's such a cliche thing to say, but felt I think how it all started is, when you have all these feelings, therapists and everyone are like, oh, start journaling. And all my acting teachers are like, journal, journal, journal. And I didn't like journaling. So instead, it started coming out in lyrics. And I was just kind of like, oh, okay. That's interesting. And as I was writing and I was kind of writing down these ideas and things, I brought them into the writer's room and I just, kind of I feel like I put some of these feelings on a journal, if you will, my writing book. And I brought them into the room and I said, hey guys, like, can you help me write my story and kind of get my point across in the things that I want to get my point across in. So I think that that's probably what brought me there was seeing the words written on the page, like, hey girl, you got to go do something with this.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I have had my fair share of therapists and my mother be like, write it down. I'm like, no,
Oh, yeah. I'm just like,
no.
what?
But let's talk Cowboy Pillow. I feel like it's such a clever title. I think my favorite thing about the title is that you really don't know which way it's going to go when you push
Yeah.
play. You're like, is it going to be fun and flirty? Is it going to be a little more introspective? So, kind of talk to me about what inspired that song and why it ended up on your journal pages.
Yeah, absolutely. So that song was actually the most last minute song. So I would say all of the other songs were kind of mapped out. And then I knew I wanted to write 5 songs. So this was going to be the fifth, so I mean, a lot of songs were written, but this was going to be the fifth one and that we were on. And I had just gone on a date in Los Angeles with this guy. And then he asked me, oh, where are you going to be next? And I said, I'm going to be in Nashville. And he said, well, what if I came to Nashville? And I said, listen, like, I'm recording this project, but I said, maybe after I'm done in the studio, I can come and we can go do something. Every day he picked me up. He brought me to the exact, a restaurant, movie, brought me home, put me in bed on time, and he was so respectful. And I think one of the big things that, my generation might have a bad taste in their mouth about is traditional marriage. And we had talked a lot about that. And my parents have traditional marriage. His parents have a pretty traditional marriage. I have a lot of friends, so I've grown up around it. And we weren't dating yet. And he was so respectful. I mean, didn't even kiss me. I mean, nothing. So I just was like, wow, this guy is really cool. And I was telling my producer about it. And I told him, I said, I really like this phrase that, and to be honest with you, I don't know where I heard it or how it appeared in my brain, but I had written it down in my notes, like, oh, this is cool. But I said to him, I said, I really want to make it about a traditional relationship, but I want it to be fun because I think when people think traditional in any aspect, even besides marriage, they think, oh, okay, boring, and I was like, I don't want it to be boring. I want it to be fun. I want it to be flirty. So that was kind of how it came to be because then I was we had one other writer, Nick Columbia, and my producer, Zach Allen, and they were kind of talking about their wives and how, after a long day of work, it's nice to just come home and that be their peace and their safe place. And, kind of how women are superheroes and all of that stuff and honoring their women and all, and we started kind of feeding off of each other. And then these lyrics started coming that just were fun and flirty, but very meaningful to everyone. And I love just hearing how much they were uplifting women because I think also when people hear traditional marriage, they're like, oh, okay, women might be oppressed or, whatever. And in some cases, I'm sure that's true. But in my case, thank goodness, it just wasn't. So that guy that I went on a date with, we're here almost a year and a half later and we're still together. So yeah.
I love that. How did you find kind of balancing this humor and this heart while like you said, sometimes when people think traditional, they think boring, oppressed, you know, doormat. You know, I mean, there's all
Yeah.
these words that kind of come to, you know, people's minds when they think about that. So how did you kind of in the writer's room balance that humor, that heart, but make it still really kind of relatable to people and not just like a silly song?
Yeah, I think it comes from that peace aspect, you know, the from the very beginning of the song it talks about this guy, you know, coming in from, you know, sweating out in the field, you know, doing all the hard man work, and then, you know, he comes in and, you know, his wife has, you know, food ready, and she's like, but if you want to skip it, you know, we can. I can, you know, whatever, and we can have some fun. So I think that how I balanced it is I kind of put it into two categories. I think women can be very peaceful if they have a good leader. And I say that because, you know, I've probably preached a little bit about this on my Instagram as well, but I think if you have a good leader, or if you are a good leader as a man, you are going to have a woman who is peaceful. However, not all leaders are good leaders. So we have to pick good leaders, because if you're a bad leader, your woman's not going to be peaceful, you know? So I think that the I'm not sure where the balance comes from, but that's how the comedy is more easy for me. Bringing it down and being grounded is what's hard. So I think that's how I divided, or not divided, but meshed the two together, was saying, you know, this is the piece that's grounded, and this is the piece that I think we can have some fun and, you know, be a little flirty, you know, the Cowboy Pillows aspect that I had written down in my notes. I was just like, I want this to be fun and not boring and not sad, or, you know, whatever, because God knows I have some other sad ones on the project, so we didn't need another one.
I love that. I call those saddies for the baddies, is what I
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, I definitely have some saddies for the baddies for sure.
I love it. How do you feel like, you know, especially you mentioned that this was kind of the last song, The Stamp. How do you feel like your music has evolved with this? How do you feel like you've evolved as a person and a songwriter? And I just love that this is like a legit story, which
Yeah.
you as an actress cracks me up, because now it's like, okay, let's submit this to Hallmark and have it be like
Yeah.
a movie now too. But kind of talk to me about the evolution and why you feel like this song needed to be on this project.
You know, I think that, as crazy as it sounds, I really love this song, and it was probably it's probably one of my favorites. And I think that the way it helped me develop is I didn't know if I, and this probably sounds really weird to say, but I didn't know if I could do it. I didn't know if I could make something that I was proud of and that, you know, was good. And I didn't know if I could write, and I didn't know if I could, you know, go in, because we had a live band for all of the music, and I didn't know if I could, you know, and we were recording at Sony Studio. So, and this is my first time. So I'm like scared. And I just didn't know if I didn't know if I could articulate anything that I wanted. You know, I didn't know. But my producer said, you know, you should be there, you should hear it, you know, if you have no whatever. And it's just kind of like the glass slipper fit. So I think that this song for me uh really proved that I can do this, and that I can, you know, put together a project that's really good. Um, and yeah, and I think that's kind of what it did for me, which is kind of silly, because I think all the songs maybe helped me grow more confident. But really that one was kind of, as we were writing it, I was like, wow, okay, that's really, you know, even if I didn't write this, I would go and listen to it, and that's what that song was for me. So, yeah.
Okay. The elephant in the room. What does Mr. Cowboy Pillow think about the song?
He loves the song.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I was just in Florida, in Indiana, with his family for the 4th of July. And they must have played the song on the, we went out on the boat on the lake, and they must have played that song about 10 times for everyone, which is just so incredible. So I would say that he really likes the song. And sometimes he'll just be walking around the house and singing it. So Mr. Cowboy Pillows loves Cowboy Pillows.